All right, hello everyone. I'm Thomas and welcome to my channel. I do educational videos on mostly obscure and esoteric topics, uh, things that I think are very important that people don't know anything about, that I've discovered over my many years of doing research. And we are right now I think this is the 34th video that we've done on the reciprocal system of theory, developed by Dewey B. Larson back in the 20th century. He died back in 1990, and his work was carried forward by Dr. Bruce Perrett and others until Perrett died in 2020. And hopefully the theory is not going to be discarded and thrown by the wayside. Hopefully there are more people like me who are trying to understand the theory and develop it even further. It is a very difficult theory to understand, mainly because there's a lot of stuff that you have to unlearn about every subject. It is a theory of everything. It can be plugged into any subject that you can think of. And it is kind of very much of an equalizer for non-scientists, because non-scientists can handle it just as well as scientists can, or better. And I think that scientists are going to be the last people to come over to the reciprocal system eventually. But I do think that by the end of the 21st century, by the beginning of the 22nd century, the reciprocal system will be how we do everything. And the basics of the system are that now it took Larson about 20 years to get to this point, but he narrowed these things down into two postulates. The first of which is that we'll try to read it verbatim here, even though it's very short. I should have it even memorized by now, but the first postulate is that the physical universe is composed entirely of one component, motion, existing in 3 dimensions, in discrete units, and with 2 reciprocal aspects, space and time. Okay, so the ancient Greeks thought the universe was made out of matter, atoms. Einstein came along 25 centuries later and said the universe is not made out of matter. It looks like it, but it's made out of energy. Energy equals matter times the speed of light squared. Underlying all this matter is a bunch of energy. Larson came along just 25 years later or so and said, well, if E equals mc squared, that means that neither matter nor energy can be the most fundamental thing. The most fundamental thing underlies both of them, and that is motion. Now, other people have come up with that before, such as Hobbes and Descartes, but they never made it work because they didn't define motion, redefine motion. And for Larson, motion is the relationship between space and time. Any type of relationship between space and time. So for example, you have speed. Speed is one kind of motion, and speed is space divided by time. The car is moving 10 miles an hour, 10 miles of space in 1 hour of time. Now, if you reverse that and you go time over space, then you say, it took me 3 hours to move that pile 20 feet. So that is 3 hours of time per 20 feet of space. And that is energy. Energy is time over space. Turns out that all fundamental units in science can be described entirely by a relationship between time and space. So motion is not only, space and time are not only the containers of the universe. They are actually the contents of the universe. We're not in space, we are space. We're not in time, we are time. But really, it's space and time. Space and time have to be together as a relationship in motion in a fraction. And then also, these units are in discrete units. There is a smallest unit of space and a smallest unit of time. The smallest unit of space is actually fairly large, 4.56 times 10 to the minus 8 centimeters. I mean, it's microscopic, but it's huge compared to, the wavelength of, gamma rays or something. And the unit of time is incredibly small, meaning that there are over 6.5 quadrillion units of time in 1 second. So 6.5 quadrillion units of time per second. Okay, and they both have 3 dimensions. Really, they are identical to each other, space and time. They both have the same qualities. So we recognize that space has 3 dimensions or more, but time also has those 3 dimensions or more. And we recognize that time is progressing. It's always getting later and later. And so we also recognize that space is progressing. Things are always getting further and further apart. And according to Larson, we see that in the recession of the distant galaxies. The distant galaxies are moving apart, and the further apart they are, the faster they are moving. Of course, you need to believe in galaxies and space and all that stuff before you believe in any of that. So, but now he's got the second fundamental postulate. The physical universe conforms to the relations of ordinary commutative mathematics. Its magnitudes are absolute and its geometry is Euclidean. That's basically unneeded, because it's basically just saying that, I mean, you pretty much have to commit to that just to be a scientist, just to engage in scientific discourse, that math works, and that if you measure something, it's absolute. It means that that's what's going on. I think Larson says that, as a, you have to agree to this second postulate just in order to even to be a scientist. Now, Bruce Perret has gone over this postulate and has changed a few aspects of it, especially the geometry, the Euclidean geometry. That's your your XYZ coordinates. Larson, Perret changes that over to projective geometry, of which Euclidean geometry is a subset. So Euclidean geometry is a special case of projective geometry, and Perret finds that it's limiting, and it's only applicable to certain circumstances, and that the projective geometry is more all-inclusive. Okay, now he starts with those 2 postulates, and he derives an entire universe out of that, step-by-step deduction. And he wrote books on physics and astrophysics and chemistry and astronomy and so on. Now we're looking at his final book that is on metaphysics. And this came out after he died. And this is an attempt to extend his theory into the social sciences, more or less. And he ended up having to derive 4 new postulates that we covered a few videos ago. And so that is kind of the basis for his going into the ethical, the religious, philosophical, the biological even, and the psychological. And so we're sitting here in chapter 7, and chapters 5, 6, and 7 are called, the first level, the second level, the third level. The first level, okay, again, we've got this boundary line. For Einstein, this boundary line is the maximum, the speed of light. Nothing can go faster than the speed of light. For Larson, with his universe of motion, where everything is motion, then motion is actually the midpoint or the neutral point of the universe. And there's half of the universe that moves slower than the speed of light that we're accustomed to, calls the material sector, and then half of the universe that moves faster than the speed of light, and that is the cosmic sector. He calls that sector 2. And so we have out of those two sectors, and then the boundary between them, which I think is sector 3, although he doesn't say that explicitly. He doesn't really give a source for the sector 3. So you've got these 3 sectors, and you also have 3 levels, and the levels are what we actually observe. The sectors are what are actually there. The levels are what we actually observe. So he says, summarizing the conclusions of chapters 5, 6, and 7 as follows. There are 3 separate levels of existence accessible to our observation. 1, inanimate matter and phenomena, sector 1. 2, biological organisms. So that is sector 2 combined with sector 1, controlling sector 1. And the analogy he uses is like a thermostat in a room. The thermostat is just a minor aspect of that room, but it controls the whole environment of the room. And in the same way, the sector 2 entity becomes a minor aspect of this overall sector 1 material unit, but it controls that unit. And then, so that's a biological organism. And then 3 is the ethical man, where the sector 3 unit takes control of the overall life unit and takes control of that and starts making decisions for the overall life unit. Inanimate matter and associated phenomena are purely physical. This is sector 1. Inanimate matter and associated phenomena are purely physical and are constituents of the material sector of the universe. Okay, now sector 2. Biological organisms are material structures under the control of life units originating in the cosmic or the inverse sector of the universe, sector 2. So under the control of life units originating material structures under the control of life units. Okay, then sector 3. Ethical man is a biological organism, sector 2, in which an overriding control by a unit from the sector of the universe outside space and time. Sector 3 is superimposed on the control exercised by the life units. So the sector 3 control is superimposed on the sector 2 control. In other words, they're somewhat competing against each other. Each sector of the universe is governed by its own set of natural laws, and each of the 3 levels of observable existence is subject to the laws and principles of the sector in control. So each one of the sectors has different laws, and they are subject to those laws, to whichever law that they are operating under. By reason of the operation of these laws, level 1, material existence, is directed toward aggregation. Basically, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Level 2, up until the biggest, which is DNA. Okay, so level 1 is directed toward getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it's at its most complex, which is DNA. Level 2, biological existence, is directed not toward aggregation, but toward survival of the individual and his species. Okay, and so theoretically, if this is analogous, the survival becomes the ability to survive becomes more and more and more and more complex until it gets to a maximum level. And he doesn't say this right here, but that level is intelligence. So once it gets to a level of intelligence, that would be the analogous to the DNA, where once you get to a level of DNA, then a level 2 or sector 2 aspect can then take control. And in the same way, when you're a biological existence, a level 2 existence, once you get to a certain level of intelligence, then the sector 3 unit can take control. So let me just read this one again. By reason of the operation of these laws, level 1, material existence, is directed toward aggregation. Level 2, biological existence, is directed toward survival of the individual and his species. And level 3, the ethical human existence, is directed toward ethical conduct. The change from level 1, no control mechanism, to level 2, sector 2 control, is immediate and complete. The change from level 2 to level 3 under sector 3 control takes place gradually and irregularly, and human existence normally involves a conflict between the two controls. Now, anybody who's watched any of my videos on Tree of Life or understands Tree of Life recognizes that this is like a sixth sphere type thing. The sixth sphere is our free will faculty, our ability to make decisions. And we can decide to basically, there's a competition there where you decide if you're going to act in furtherance of your material structure or your animal being, your instinct, or are you going to act as a spiritual being in furtherance of the higher self? So that question is posed and answered there at the sixth sphere. It's a balance. And that is exactly what Larson is talking about here. So the sector 3 control is really taking place at the sixth sphere. You can go back and watch my videos on all of that. You might want to watch my video called Tree of Life, an introduction. It's just 10 minutes long. Okay, the existence of a sector 3 control over an intelligent biological organism confirms the validity of the postulate that the sector 3 existences are intelligent. Because in order to control, if the the most complex biological organism is determined by what's determined by intelligence, the emergence of intelligence, then obviously the sector 3 unit that eventually controls that unit also must be intelligent. So intelligent, metaphysically controlled beings resembling human individuals exist on numerous planets distributed throughout the universe. So I think he actually even says that if a being from another planet is to come here, by basically by definition or axiomatically, they must also be, if they are so advanced that they're able to come here, that they have to be also ethically oriented, so that any being who comes from a different planet is, according to Larson, already ethically developed, so they're not going to be over here doing any shenanigans. So, take that for what it's worth. That may be pointing to the fact that maybe the people that are plaguing us right now, maybe they're from the underground, or perhaps his estimation of space travel is an overestimation. Maybe space travel isn't such a complicated thing, and that it's not so far away, and maybe it just is kind of on the same level as driving to your local grocery store or something like that, and you really don't need a great deal of ethical development. Or it could be that whoever developed the technology was then taken out, and the people that didn't develop the technology took it over. So who knows? Okay, we'll start chapter 8 next time.